What's up, Yu-Gi-Oh players? It's the RJB0 coming at you with both a deck review and a deck profile. Because this week I went to Locals and I tested my Worm deck, and it was a fantastically fun deck. I also went X1. I had a lot of great games. I only lost that one match because I was against Samurai and he opened Gateway twice. That was okay, except for the fact that I then proceeded to warning a Grandmaster. Yeah, you never do that, because they will just send the Grandmaster right back to the hand and summon it again, and you go -1 and you lose 2,000 life points, and that sucks. So never do that. But that's why I lost it, and other than that, I had a great day. This deck had a great run. And let's get down to the deck review portion of the video. So first, what did I like about the deck? It's control-based, which is definitely my style. It runs tons of back row, which a lot of decks have issues with, and it allows you to really control the field and basically decide when your opponent is allowed to make their plays, which is something I really like. It requires a lot of good decision making, which I think adds an element of skill to the deck, which I really like. It also has a great matchup against anything that is very Xyz, Synchro, or Fusion heavy, because they will go into that Fusion or Xyz or Synchro, and then run into your Yogin, and then you get to bounce that Synchro or Xyz or whatever, and they go at minus, and then you can just bring the Yogin back later, and you'll see how that works. It has a spectacularly good wind-up matchup, which I think makes it really good for this format. Against a wind-up deck yesterday, I got the perfect dream play off, where I started off setting a Yogin and 5 back row. My opponent went Magician, I went Gozen, he passed turn, I drew another Yogin, I set that Yogin, and then next turn he drew MST, went Magician Shark, and as soon as he got 2 Xyz on the field, which he tried to do immediately, I activated Nebula, bounced them both, and at the end of the turn went mad pluses because of Nebula, and you'll see how that works later, and proceeded to win because he couldn't recover from that move. It has a difficult Dark World matchup because it requires a lot of setup, which Dark World doesn't allow you, so I predict it's going to have difficulties with Inzektor, but it has other things in it that make it good against Inzektor, so you'll see how that works. It's also got a decent Chaos Dragon matchup, but it has to side a lot for Chaos Dragons, just because you do. It's also, despite what I did yesterday, it's got a great Samurai matchup. I've actually won, I think, against 6 straight Samurai opponents in the past, and have never had issues with Samurai. So let's get down to the deck profile portion. So first, we have 3 Zeks and 3 Yogin. These are the main engine of the deck. Yogin is your favorite card when you're playing Worms, because you set this guy, and they run into him, and he bounces an opponent's monster. And if they go first turn Xyz plays, that's really good, because then they go at minus with that Xyz. And then you can summon Zeks, and because of Yogin's effect, when a Zex is the only monster you have on the field, you can set that Yogin from the graveyard, and then it would get banished when it's removed from the field. So you can either set Zex first and then be able to use it twice, or if you need faster setup, Zex's other effect is that you can send a Yogin to the graveyard from your deck. So you can just summon your Zex and immediately special summon a Yogin in face down defense position, set up your Nebula plays, and it works great. And it's the reason why this deck does so well against windups, is that little engine there. Then 3 Carteros, because it's a nice searcher. It makes Nebula plays even better if you can get it on the field. You get even more mad pluses, and your opponent, you can bluff your opponent into thinking that it is a Yogin, and make them just sit until you use Carteros, and then you get Zex from your deck or Yogin, and then they think that they were stupid, and they've been stalling for no reason and allowing you to set up your own plays. 2 Worm King. It's a great card, but 3 is too much because it sucks to draw. You can sack it with just 1 worm, but you'd rather not. You'd rather special it from your deck with Nebula, because you still have to lose a monster in order to use it. I did actually normal summon it a couple times against Rockstun, but that was a special situation. 2 Thunder King, because it's Thunder King. Why wouldn't you run Thunder King? Sorry, I'm trying to keep some kind of order over here. Thunder King is basically the best card in the game right now. So it's also a light, so you can use it with Gozen Match. So that makes it even better. 1 Honest, because I run a lot of light monsters. Now that's my monster count, just that. It's a very low monster count. And this deck relies on a lot of back row, and the monsters just supplement the back row. So moving on to the spells, we have 3 MSTs. This deck has a lot of issues with certain continuous back row cards, like Light Imprisoning Mirror, Skill Drain. Occasionally Macro can hurt this deck, but not really. Royal Decree is a big issue for this deck, and also it's just nice to be able to end phase MST your opponent's cards. And you can set it with Starlight and immediately make Starlight live. So there are a lot of good things to do with MST in this deck, so I run 3 of it. 2 Pot of Duality. If I could, I would run 3, but I can't. Pot of Duality just allows you to run that low monster count and get your cards faster, especially since you don't do a lot of special summoning with this deck. 1 Book of Moon, because it's amazing. It's a staple. It's even better in this deck because it allows you to reset your worm monsters and your staples, Dark Hole, Heavy, and Reborn. Then the MVP of this deck, 3 W Nebula Meteorite. Now, for those of you who don't know what Nebula does, if I get to activate it, you're going to have a bad time. If your Yu-Gi-Oh! Channel did a deck detective on this deck, it would be 3 seconds long and it would consist of activate W Nebula Meteorite game, because this card is broken. If you don't know what it does, it flips. I activate it, it flips all face down monsters on the field face up. So right there, it allows you to use your worm monster's effects, especially Yagin, at any time. So your opponent goes into an Xyz monster, like they go into Shockmaster. You activate Nebula, you bounce that Shockmaster back before they get to use its effect. If your opponent attacks your Yagin, you can activate Nebula, it bounces the monster, the attack doesn't go through, and then at the end of the turn, it flips that monster face down, or it flips all your worm monsters face down, so it resets their effects. And then you draw a card for each one that was flipped face down, and then if you successfully set at least 1 worm monster, you can special summon a Worm King from your deck. It's actually any level 7 or higher worm monster, but Worm King is the best, and so it's the only one that I run. But this card gives you mad pluses, and it's the reason why this deck works so well. Then 2 Fiendish Chain. I don't like hand traps because they're dead against Hero and Dark World, which are 2 hard matchups for this deck, and also the fact that you can protect Fiendish Chain, and it blocks attacks too. So it's all around good, and it keeps negating their effects, so if my opponent goes into Ryo, then I won't have as many issues with it. And it's just fantastic all around. 2 Mirror Force, because this deck can run a lot of back row, which is nice. And having that mass field clearing is really great. 2 Bottomless, to stop summons. There are some summons that you just can't let go through, and that's why you have warnings. I do not run Judgment because this deck already has some issues with life points. I run a one of, where is it? 7 Tools, because other people warninging my stuff actually kind of sucks, because there are tons of targets for warning in this deck. Meteorite is a target for warning, which is dumb. Starlight Road. So I like the 7 Tools over Dark Bribe because it's not only not a -1 like Dark Bribe, but I know that my biggest issues are going to be with traps. So I like knowing that I can always have an answer for traps. Then I have 2 Starlight Roads to protect the massive amounts of back row I have, not to mention the fact that it can stop things like Torrential and Mirror Force. 1 D-Prison. It's a little slow for my taste. I might side 1 in against Chaos Dragons, But I only actually own one right now, so I just put in one, and it's been serving me just fine. One Compulse, I side another Compulse against windups, but this card works really well against any deck that makes Xyz, and it's really fast, it's chainable, it's helpful. Only one Torrential, because I like keeping my monsters, and I have enough monster clearing already. So that's the main deck. The extra deck, I have, I'm doing this kind of backwards. I have one Chimera Tech, because I side in the Cyber Dragon, so against Girja and windups, that's very good. One Black Rose, one Mistworm, and one Catastor, because I don't actually run Veilers or any tuners myself, but I do run a lot of level 4s and Monster Reborn, and I think that if my opponent is probably going to be using Veilers against me, so if I can Monster Reborn a Veiler, I can go into Catastor or Mistworm and Black Rose just because it's Black Rose. 2 Stardusts, because I run the 2 Starlight Road. 3 Utopia. If I could replace one of these with a Shockmaster, I would, but I don't actually have a Shockmaster yet. But since Zex, when it summons Yagin, or when Yagin summons itself using Zex, banishes itself, I like to be able to Xyz into 4 a lot, so that I can make sure that my Yagin doesn't get banished and I can use it again. So having 3 Utopias was okay. Maestro, because it's like Utopia but better. The only reason I only run one is because it isn't good with Gozen Match, and I use Gozen Match a lot. One Papal Operative actually won me a game against Gusto, and it's kind of a staple. Violon de Sigma won me my one game against Samurai yesterday because I activated Gozen Match, and I took their keys on, and they could only summon Earth monsters, and I just kept smacking their Earth monsters. So it's really good. As for the side deck, I ran that extra compulsory, 2 macro, because the only thing that I really need the graveyard for is when I want to make that Zex Yagin play, but I usually start off with a Zex and a Yagin, and macro usually takes me a little while to have to activate, but it's good against Chaos Dragon and Dark World, and it can also be good against Windup and Inzektor. 1 Alien Brain, especially good against Chaos Dragon, because I can steal their monsters. It's also pretty good against heroes, because they usually run very few monsters, and if they run over one of my monsters, I like being able to take it. Needle Stealing, I'm probably going to take out and replace with something else, because I never actually needed to side it against anything. 1 Shadow Imprisoning Mirror, once again, helps me against Dark Worlds, and Dark World is a really hard matchup. 2 Gozen Match. Now, this was basically the MVP side deck card, because I fought a lot of Samurai decks and a lot of wind-up decks, and this card beats them both. And it's just freaking fantastic. My other MVP side deck card, I would say even more so, is Prohibition. I might actually main another one of these. I'd like to put a second one in, though, because if you can guess what deck you're playing against, or if you're going game 2, you can basically stop it. Like against Samurai, you could say Kagemusha, and you basically have the game. I used it against Gusto, and I prohibited Creature Swap, and that also won me a game. So this card is amazing, and you should definitely use it. 1 Soul Taker, again for Chaos Dragon, system down in case I ran into any Girja. Same with Cyber Dragon, which also worked nicely against windups. It helped me against Rockstun too. I think I might take out Kinetic Soldier for another Gemini Imp, because once again this deck has issues with the Dark World matchup. And I never actually sided in Kinetic Soldier. So that's the deck profile. Hope you guys liked it. I'll be making some more content this week. And until then, this is the RJB0 signing out.